Hello, welcome. I'm very excited to introduce you all today to Kylianne. Kylianne has been a personal trainer for about 5 years, and she is now meshing her skills together with personal training and as a trained counsellor to bring to us and the world the Move for Mental Health initiative. And it's really exciting to speak to Kylianne because for me, on my own journey, she's been such an inspiration, but also to many women that I support also know Kylianne. So welcome today, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just so excited because you really are an inspiration, and that is not an understatement.
Thanks.
A bit of a background. I first got in touch with Kylianne when I was pregnant with my second child. I'd heard through the grapevine that Kylianne had experienced prolapse after the birth of her first child, and she had created an online program for mums-to-be and new mums. And I wanted to get in touch with her because I felt that she could really understand my needs as a woman impacted from birth injuries and prolapse. So can you tell me a little bit, if you don't mind me asking, just a little bit more about your prolapse journey specifically, because this is for, women that are going through what we've been through. When did you first realize that something wasn't right?
Yeah, sure. So I, being a personal trainer, had kept what I thought was really physically fit throughout the first pregnancy. And then I was inducted, had quite an intense induction, I suppose, a interesting birth at the end where I had a little Superman come out. She loved to have her little hand on her head on the way through, and on the way out I think she just caused some damage. So I knew from day dot that things weren't right, and I was on to my midwives. I was trying to see women's health physio straight up, but I was kind of refused care until
physio
because when I was pregnant, I went through a pre and postnatal training course. So I was aware of women's health physios, luckily. And I knew we had access to one at the hospital. So I'm not sure if I think I got notified. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just knew I needed to see a physio because they were coming around doing their checks at the end. I guess it's 4 years ago, so I'm a bit sketchy on the details. Anyway, I had a physio come and check, and she checked my my abdominal separation. She checked my pelvic floor function. And it was when she checked my pelvic floor function that I kind of went into a serious state of stress because I couldn't feel anything when she asked me to, do that contraction. And it was just a Kegel she asked me to do, and I didn't really know enough about it. So that kind of sent me into this major stress around that. And then I wanted to see a women's health physio, knowing that there was one at the hospital. And I refused care. They told me basically that I couldn't see one until I was 8 weeks post birth because everything I was experiencing was normal. Mm-hmm. But I knew things weren't right. Yeah. I knew from day dot that things felt not normal. And then I actually got a really bad flu or cold, and I had a chronic cough for about 6 weeks post birth, and about 8 weeks post birth I felt it happen, and I felt the drop in the organs in the pelvic tissue. So I knew straight away, which was not a nice place to be, not having anyone to talk to about it or anything. And it wasn't actually until I got in touch with a mentor of mine, John Polly, who runs Be Free in Perth, and he put me in touch with Mish. Yeah. So I spoke to Mish. Yeah, that was my first contact with Mish, and she kind of put me on the right path from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would you say in those days, you're a new mum, a first time mum, how did it impact you in that sort of, I guess first year, I suppose, because it's kind of a year, isn't it? Like it's a fact finding mission, trying to get that right help, trying to find the best people to speak to. So I'm guessing it would have impacted your life as a mum, but also your work and perhaps even your lifestyle.
Yeah, so it was huge for me because as you start Googling and looking into it, you see all the things that you can't do. And that's kind of all that you can see, especially when you're in that really high chronic state of stress around it. And being someone that has struggled with mental illness for a majority of my adult life, I was using exercise as a coping strategy. So I kind of felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me. So this strategy that I'd used so successfully for all of this time, and that I was kind of helping other people indirectly use for the same thing, I thought was no longer. So that kind of sent me down a really, really dark spiral back into my depression, anxiety. And I was obsessed. I was obsessed with finding out more. I was like trying to find the right team. And I was very lucky because at that time I came into contact again with another mentor that I had in the fitness industry, Ian O'Dwyer. Yeah. And he coached me through that time, and he actually put me in touch with Robin Kerr. So I was very lucky in my first year that I had one of the best women's health physiotherapists in Australia on my side and in my corner. And she was amazing.
Based in
Noosa.
And you're based in WA.
Karratha.
Yeah. So I can't pronounce it. And so she was able to treat you remotely.
I think she more acted as support. So it was kind of like, for me, I would want to know something straight away. And she was amazing because she became a sort of mentor for me in the work that I was doing as well. So I was able to have that relationship where I could contact her outside of clinical hours and ask her questions, because I was using myself as a case study, essentially. One of the most brilliant advice I ever got was from Ian O'Dwyer, saying, this is what's going to organically evolve what you do in your business. This has happened for a reason. Yeah. And he advised me to keep a case study on myself. And so I had a spreadsheet that I kept physical symptoms, what had happened emotionally, what movement I'd done. Like it was huge, what my sleep was like, nutrition, everything. So I had this huge scope of things that I'd keep track of every day for 52 weeks. I did that. Wow. Yeah. So I used myself as a case study. So that was part of my way of overcoming it, I suppose. I know we're going to talk about acceptance later on, but that was a part of my journey in discovering, kind of coming to accept the prolapse, and because I started to use it as a purpose.
And it's a long journey, isn't it? Because you talked about obviously having previous history with mental health condition, but do you think that prolapse, or having to deal with prolapse, was also a big trigger?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I can't help but feel that there's perhaps many women in a similar situation that have found themselves with something that they didn't know could happen. Because, do you mind me asking, had you heard of prolapse prior to having a prolapse? Oh, you had?
I had.
Okay, well, yeah. My thing is that I often speak to women from all walks of life, health professionals, nurses, from every sort of area that they've never heard of a prolapse, and then they get it and they're just like, what on earth is happening to me? And that massive psychological fallout, and throw into the mix hormones in that postpartum period, and what is normal sort of baby blue stuff, or what can be just termed as postnatal depression. But what is an anxiety or depression triggered from having your body not be the way it should be, or work the way it should?
Well, in my experience with the clients that have come my way that have suffered prolapse as a result, we can never pinpoint when prolapse happened, but a lot of the times it's the birthing or the pregnancy that's the straw that's broken the camel's back. And that's when I see clients. And most of the time, it is when the ones that are the most affected, and I'm talking about people that even are at a grade 1, which is sometimes classified as normal these days. So, but I'm seeing women with grade 1 diagnosis that are so mentally crippled by that. It's unbelievable. And so that's kind of what sparks that curiosity around, is it a trigger? I would say absolutely. Is it backed up by research? I'm not sure. But the people that... it will be soon, I'm sure.
I hope so, because I think the work you're doing is so important. But I feel that women in that sort of crucial postpartum period, which is going to be a lot of the women that are watching this today. But we know that women are impacted from a difficult birth many, many years afterwards as well. But no, it seems at this stage that health practitioners may not be connecting the dots, that women in that postpartum period aren't being asked, how are you physically? And then sort of connecting the dots with perhaps a physical symptom is causing that resultant psychological trauma. So it is, these conversations are so important. Do you mind me asking?
I see that cycle though of like, it's what I was going to say is that a lot of the women I see have never connected the dots, that they have used exercise as some sort of mental coping strategy for something. So it could be that they exercise and that boosts their self-esteem, so it's limiting the amount of negative self-talk they have. And then when they get prolapse, it like all comes back because they're scared to move, because they don't know that you can move, and they don't have the right support around them. So there's so many pieces of the puzzle. And I totally agree that the medical clinicians and practitioners are not connecting the dots. I feel like the mental and emotional side of things is not taken into consideration enough. And I guess that's where people like I come in. So
you yourselves, fitness professionals that have awareness around this, and then fitness professionals collaborating like you did with your physiotherapist to work together to better upskill. But I just feel that we need to have these conversations so that women know it is normal, and but it's not okay, and that we don't have to live with it, and how you're feeling is also normal as well. Because I don't know if you sort of agree with this, but there is you do go through a huge shift. You go through grief, you go through anger, and you feel completely ripped off, don't you? And I think that messaging out there that you can't live the life you want with prolapse is a very dangerous message, because I don't know, there's no evidence, this is just my theory. I think women are more active than ever. Probably not true, but cave women were probably really active, but you know what I mean. Like, they're more into high intensity training, and suddenly take that away, and what is what is going to happen to someone's mind with that?
And that is the problem. And the other thing I'm seeing a lot of is women being diagnosed and withdrawing because they don't realize that there are 50% of women are diagnosed with prolapse. They don't know that statistic, so they feel like they're walking around with this massive secret that they can't tell people because it's in the pelvic area. And that, when you can't voice that is so,
it's disempowering.
That's so, it is, but it's also stunts your recovery journey. So I've seen women in my groups be able to actually voice it to other people, and oh my God, just the thriving that goes on from that point is amazing.
I think it just brings back to the amazing work you're doing as well. I've always said that exercise is like the best form of antidepressant. And ironically, if we don't get the awareness out there with healthcare providers, they're not, some healthcare providers, psychiatrists, psychologists might prescribe exercise as a treatment, especially if a woman doesn't want to take antidepressants, and not realize that woman also has some kind of physical injury. And she may not be seeking help for that, but she doesn't want to do it because, for example, she might be suffering from urinary incontinence. So these conversations are so important, and you are amazing for bringing some of this to the forefront as well. But let's burning questions that I know my ladies would want to ask you is how do you manage day to day? For example, if you're symptomatic, do you train every day, or do you talk to us about your sort of day-to-day management? Because it is like an injury, so it's got risk of coming back. So if you have improvement with prolapse, you do have to manage it. Is that right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So no, I don't train every day. I now look at it as, I always like to have at the moment, or since the birth of my second child, I wanted to have like a bigger purpose for my movement, which is kind of where the Move Mental Health Initiative came from. I needed something that encouraged me to move to overcome that fear second time round as well. So no, I don't move every day, but I move in ways that I find joy in. And then when you're moving in ways that you find joy in, that you feel safe in, that's where I find less symptoms happen. You listen to your body, you're more in tune. And that's what I do. So I just make sure I'm more active in my everyday life as well. You know, I walk Marika to school for that day, and that will count. You know, just counting things that you probably wouldn't normally count as exercise. You know, just add it all up. If you're up all day cleaning, like it's all movement. Like it's all. I think we get stuck in this little box of what exercise looks like. You know, like fuck that. It's like, you know, if you're walking around carrying your child around, you're still doing weighted movement. It's loaded exercise. It's like, I just think, we need to stop boxing ourselves into what exercise looks like. And the other thing is too, if there's something that you can't do right now, it doesn't mean it's off the table forever. But maybe we just need to figure out what it is that you got out of that exercise emotionally that you loved so much, and apply it to something else so you're still getting what you need in a different way that's beneficial to you.
Yeah, I think in those early days you get so caught up in what you can't do that you don't actually think about, how can I get back to doing the things I want to do, or how can I have more fun with how I move. And what I love about following you on Instagram, for example, is you're always on the climbing frame or something with your kids. I just think that's, and that is movement, you know. That
combat stress with play.
Yeah, it's such a positive experience. It's not moving to look good. It's great. And that's a big thing for you as well. It's not about moving to look a certain way. It's moving to feel a certain way, and that's a huge thing. You also mentioned, obviously, since having your second child. So interesting fact about Kylianne and I is that we were both pregnant at the same time, and our babies were due a week apart. So we went on each other a lot through pregnancy, didn't we?
We did.
What symptoms we were feeling and how we were coping, and like that was amazing for me, just to have someone I could go, are you feeling this at the moment? And so can you tell us a bit about second pregnancy with Prolapse, because that's another big question. Were you ready? Like, how did you get to the place mentally where you were ready for another child? Did that take some, you know, did you have to work through it, or were you just ready?
I think it comes down to being fully accepting of where you are with your prolapse. So once I felt I was mentally ready, and I think that's going to take you, but I made sure I sought all of the help that I needed in order to get to that place. And if someone, in preparation for, I'm going to say for birth, I was actually seeing a sexologist. I saw a women's health physio throughout. I had a functional nutritionist. I had a movement coaches on my side as well. So I just made sure I was tapping into as many support systems as I could, so that I knew I had done everything that I could to prevent, but then also was prepared that I may not prevent further prolapses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen.
And you sort of touch upon, you need a team, really. It's not getting that one source of advice from your GP or your obstetrician, but actually finding your team that are going to help you in the best place mentally to get to where you want to be it having another child, to be it having the birth you want. Yeah. So
first time round, I birthed in a public hospital, and in some cases that was a positive experience, and then other cases it wasn't. So second time round, I decided that I would go private, because I wanted to have that trust with my obstetrician and my, not that I met the midwife team or anything, but I knew who was going to be on, and I could get some information on that. Whereas up here, we have locums. So you could just have someone rock in, you have to have a C-section, and you don't know who they are, you have no trust. So I decided I wanted that trust, and that's what would help me feel safe mentally. I was able to, luckily with my obstetrician, really voice my concerns and talk out every single option. And then we didn't actually make the choice on which way I would birth until a lot closer, depending, like, based on how I was physically and mentally. And I decided to go for an elective C-section because in my mind, I wanted the least amount of stress possible so that I was in the best mental capacity to recover. I'm not even talking about physical, I'm talking about mental. So mental, so that I could be in a better physical position to recover as well. So mentally, that was my driver, is I didn't want to have that stress that I had the first time around, because it just pushed out my recovery so far. Because it was just this constant cycle, and then being in such a chronic state of stress, it just really inhibits your ability for the tissue to recover. So yeah, that was my thinking behind that. And then I just made sure that I was getting everything in my body that I could to make sure that my tissue could recover as well as possible from a deep wound, like a C-section cut. So yeah, that's kind of was my thinking.
Yeah, I completely hear what you're saying. Did you have to go through like an element of trying to find peace with having, like, was there any guilt attached to having a cesarean section? I remember, because I also had an elective cesarean, as you know, for my second, and I think that I did sort of, there were moments where I thought, oh, maybe I should have a vaginal birth, but exactly like you, I think I wanted that continuity of care. I wanted to remove out all the as many variables as I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I wanted, and you know, the preparation was key, and focusing a lot on recovery. I mean, first time round my recovery after vaginal birth, I had all the herbs and all the things that were going to help me recover quickly, and they sat at home gathering dust while I recovered in hospital for a week. So
that's it. Yeah,
it's eliminating some of those variables. But how was your recovery, and has your view, you know, we're kind of lucky because now we can compare two different modes. But has your view on cesarean sections changed at all since you've experienced it, like the recovery? How was your recovery?
My recovery was amazing. I made sure I was getting all the supplementation that I needed in order to promote tissue healing. I actually put myself in a position where I would have the most support possible. So I actually flew down from Karratha to Perth to live with my family for 4 months. So I spent 2 months prior, so I had help. So that was the other thing. I had help with Micah. I had really bad pelvic pain. Had help with Micah. There was significantly less stress because I didn't have to do everything, wasn't expected to either. I had, my nutrition was sorted. And then post-birth, I stayed down for another 6 weeks, or I think it might have even been 8 weeks in the end. So I made sure I was in a village. Like, I was not going through what I went through the first time, where I withdrew from help. I tried to do it all on my own. And yeah, so look, I have major respect for women that go back for second cesareans, because if I'm totally honest, not sure I could do it again. But that's more of like a needle phobia and other things going on there. So I'm proud of that I did it. But yeah, no, it hasn't changed. I think if anything, it's just given me such amazing insight into what other women go through, and some sort of relatability in terms of if they have to go for an emergency C-section. I can see how that would really put such mental stress on them. And that's, like, I see a lot of women that get post-traumatic stress disorder because of an emergency C-section. So I just like to have that outlook of I can really help clients on another level now because I've experienced both.
I feel, yeah, that kind of leads nicely into my next question, because do you think your experience as you went into motherhood and obviously experienced prolapse, do you think it's not only, because I feel, and you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it did help shift the course of your work, but it's also obviously helped, like you say, helped you relate to other new mums, because there's so much more under the surface, and that's the thing with something like prolapse, is no one can see it, so a lot of people are suffering in silence. And you're very vocal about talking, you talk about the mental health component, and I, you know, has this really influenced your work? You kind of turn prolapse into a positive almost.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely have. I don't have any resentment towards it at all, because I think if I did, I'd still be in my recovery period, if that makes sense. So the turning point for me was seeing that prolapse was the reason that put me on path to my purpose. So if anything, I can only be but grateful for it and for my experience.
Anything about mine.
And that is, and that is the only time when things got better. Is when I could see both sides. I was able to balance it out. Yeah, sure, there's negative sides to it, but there's also some really amazing outcomes and opportunities. And like I spoke at the Women's Health and Fitness Summit, and that's what catapulted me into my fitness presenting career. And it's helped me carve out some sort of leadership role in the fitness industry. So I can't be anything but grateful. And I can't stress that enough. It's when you can see what it's given you. You have to see what it's given you, and that's when the real journey starts. And you better be ready for it.
I mean, it is a hell of a journey, and it does take time. And but I think the message that's really clear from you is that one thing you said, and it's always stuck with me, is that you have prolapse, you are not prolapse. And it is, and it fits with anything. You know, you're depressed, but you are not. You know, it's sort of
it's very easy to attach yourself to a story. And when you release the story and see what it's given you instead of being run by it, that's where a lot of change happens.
So how is it now? How are your symptoms now? Because I think we both saw, for transparency, I think in those early days, in that postpartum period with our second, we had a lot of symptoms. And for me, there was a lot of angst around, is this how it's going to be? I'm now, we're both now 16 months postpartum. Where are you at now?
So after the birth of Luca, I actually was diagnosed with rectocele as well. So the very thing I was trying to avoid getting, I got. And I remember when I think we even spoke about it that first day, and I was just like, I was a mess. But I was only a mess for about an hour. And then I knew what action I needed to take. I knew that there were things around it that I could take back control over. And I think that's the important message as well, is that we do have a level of control in order to influence our symptoms. So having major stress around the symptoms is going to create more symptoms. Obsessively checking your prolapse is going to create more stress, which is going to create more symptoms. So we need to identify what it is that's creating the symptoms, and then take action to rectify them in some way, or gain some support, or put some strategies in place. So I know so I know when I'm really, really emotionally or mentally stressed, that there are things I need to put in place. If I'm overworked and I'm not taking enough time for myself, I'll get symptoms. But I know that's what it is. And I know in 3 days' time, I'll feel better if I take some action. So it's like taking responsibility back for our role in the symptoms as well, instead of just wallowing in them.
Kind of being ruled by them. I think I had an amazing podcast the other day that was talking about resilience, and it's not easy. Like, it's a work in progress. You can't just suddenly say, right, I'm going to take back, I'm going to rule my symptoms and get over it, because for many women you can't. And we are, I'm 3 years now from diagnosis, so I've had a lot of time, same as you. But the podcast I saw was talking about committing to what you can do right now to feel better. Because you can spend, when we've got this, you can spend a lot of time thinking about the things you can't do, or what happens when you've got something next week and you need to find the nearest toilet, or things that can really consume you living with birth injuries or prolapse. So it is committing to and it's working out those things that make you feel better. So, things, for example, that make you feel better, or help you move out of that negative sort of spiral.
Me personally? So I have a couple of things. So if I get out in nature, that immediately allows me to gain perspective, because it's like, if we think about nature and its role and how it can help us physically and mentally, it's like having a phone or a piece of paper with everything negative written on it. And when you're inside or in your normal environment, it's like this, you can't see anything else. When you get into nature, it does that, you know, it just allows space for you to think clearly and to get messages around what action you need to take, or, you know, what you need. It allows you to really deeply tune into that inner voice without the negativity. So nature is, the more I get out there, the more in tune I become with myself. Another one is, if you have, and this is a great one for Rob and Kerr, if you are having symptoms, if you just get some pillows and pop them under your bum, lying flat on the floor, and just do your piston breathing, as people call it, and Robbie calls it zone breathing, and just allow the tissue to drop back and just take some pressure off. That's a really helpful one for people, and I use that as well. Moving
at some stage.
Hey,
we might have to get you or get Robin demonstrating what we mean by
yeah. If you look up, she's got, well, Robbie's got, I think she's got some PDF docs on her alchemy of motion, or if you look up Julie Weave. What else?
Points, but for me, this is why we're so alike. It's the same for me. It's always nature. But for me, when I'm in nature, it's not so much about thinking. It's more about actually not trying not to think, but being aware of other things that are around me, so that I'm not.
Well, that's it. It's sensory grounding.
It's not focused on your head, but we've got so many other senses other than our thoughts, right? And when you're in nature, it's very easy to tune into those other senses. My favorite thing is just the sound of my feet crunching, and you focus on that, you completely shift from our thoughts. And that's why I'm very excited to just have to ask you about your next initiative, which is really exciting for someone that loves outdoors and bushwalking. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you've got coming up?
Yeah, sure. So as I spoke about before, I needed a big goal last year, and so I created the Move for Mental Health Cape to Cape hike, and I took 11 women on this amazing transformational 135 kilometre hike over 7 days. And we were raising awareness for the power of movement and nature to overcome mental or postnatal depression, anxiety, but also how it helps reduce the symptoms of any mental illness, and also can help boost mental well-being to reduce the risk of mental illness. So we were also raising funds for the Gidget Foundations. They're a charity really close to my heart in terms of what they're doing for families all over Australia. And we set out with a goal of 10 grand. Hey?
They're a brilliant not-for-profit organisation. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I know you guys are close. So we set out with a goal of 10 grand, and we actually raised nearly $35,000 in the course of about 3 months, which was just, it was amazing to see the support of local community and people across Australia. So this year we're doing 2 hikes, physical hikes, Cape to Cape, with a goal of raising $50,000. But I, as I do, have all my greatest ideas in the shower. And I decided I was going to create a Cape to Cape inspired online hike. So this allows people from all over Australia and the globe to come on board, help raise funds for the Gidget Foundation, but also go on this experience themselves, where they get to experience the power of nature and the power of movement. There's also nutritional components. There is educational counselling, ecotherapy components. It's going to be amazing. And the beauty of it is that while you're investing in yourself, you're also investing in you're helping impact the lives of people in Australia, families. So I heard a quote the other day where it was, if you're just surviving, you can't dream. And I have been lucky enough to have people that have helped me go from just surviving to living, and not just living, but living in my purpose, which is pretty powerful. So that's what we're going to be doing. At the core of it is we're going to help people be able to start dreaming again, and not just any people. We're helping mums, dads, and then we're actually impacting that next generation of children as well.
Yeah.
We're allowing them to dream. So this, I like the ripple and impact, the ripple effects of this is going to be, we're not even going to see what this will do. So yeah, I'm just so pumped that it came through me and I was able to implement it.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So we'll put some more information on our website about Kylianne's initiative. And those of you that want to know straight away, feel free to contact me through the Australasian Birth Trauma Association. Thank you for your time. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people are going to take a lot of information and realise hopefully that being diagnosed with prolapse does not mean the end of all joy. There can be so much joy to experience, and you just need to find the best support. Is that right? Yeah,
I like to say that, it's not the end, it's just the start of a new chapter of your adventure. So, and I know people listening to this, and I've done podcasts and interviews before, have been like, yeah, but you're so far ahead of me. But the thing is I started where you were at some point in time. So yes, this might all sound really overwhelming and unachievable, but at one point in time, that was me thinking that. And yeah, so there is always hope, and where there's hope, there is life. So just keep fighting.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Kylianne. Talk to you soon. Cheers.
Bye.